Batman.
Well,
Yeah,
you had it down for starting half past.
Hey, you live in the future. It's okay.
Yeah, you know what, Batman? Nobody asked you. Go back to Gotham. Anyway,
fuck you gay bastard.
This is I Drink and I Know Things. This is episode number 2. All right, so I saw a thing by the Britisher today, guys, about speech and about the idea of is it okay to even be the jester anymore? Are you allowed to point out society's faults? Are you allowed to laugh at yourselves or even other people? The jester was an important figure, especially in medieval society, right, Batman? You were saying something about that right before we went live.
No, I never said anything of the sort.
And the reason,
yes, I did.
And the reason the jester was important, though, was because he was the only guy allowed to point out the faults of the ruler, and that was an important thing, right?
Well, look at you and me, Dodge. I'll come on. I make horrendous jokes about your favorite Rounders team. There's no harm in that. It pulls you back a bit. It makes you laugh. It's a kind of glue that cements male relationships, isn't it? Yeah, ribbing.
Yeah, no.
Each other.
Well, no, and we have we've mutual respect at least. I mean, you are a cunt, Batman, but you're one of my favorite cunts. So it's okay.
Yes, I'm a massive cunt, but at least I'm not Scottish. Oh, hello, Teal Feature.
Wait, hey, my beard disagrees with you, Batman. And well, here's the thing about the whole
You're a dragon, you don't have a beard.
Hey, you've never heard of a bearded dragon? They're the most adorable things when they chase grapes to eat them. And I've heard mandarin oranges, but that's another story. So no, if we can't laugh at each other, if it's not okay to be the jester, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. At least, according to Professor Peterson. Oh man, I just want to, just before you popped into the hangout, man, we're just kind of going over like the whole thing about the jester or the fool. Like the fool, according to Professor Peterson, a lot of narratives, it's the prerequisite for a hero, because if it's comedy, it's supposed to have a good ending. Because if you're a fool, if everyone can laugh at you, I mean, really, unless that's your thing, like a lot of folks might consider that a low. So in one way, there you got nowhere to go but up. But in order to actually go up, you actually need to engage. You actually need to get the hell out of town. You need to go on an adventure, frickin' do some questing, level up, frickin' make something out of yourself. Because when it all boils down to what do you got at the end of the day? You got your character. You might have some nice stuff and things, but
it's one for your memes. You look at cultures like Stalin's Russia, places like that, where there is no comedy. People don't tell jokes. They're brutal, cruel, and depressing places. Yeah, not just depressing.
Hold on, wait.
What
What if Stalin was a comedian?
We need
what if he was from Monty Python? Like, if he did it in that way.
I'm trying to make a point. And now I sound like a posh little schoolgirl saying that, but human beings need to laugh at something. We need comedy. We need humor. It's a release valve on the boring shite that we have to put up with. We need that.
Yeah. Oh, it's entertainment.
If you take it away from us, society's going to get violent.
Well, no, and the thing is, though, the jester isn't necessarily just laughing at you or making jokes. It's also saying real problems in society and pointing them out. And the jester was the only one that was actually allowed to do so without, getting their fucking head chopped off.
Yes, the other thing true. And Tail Features saying that Geordies are Poundland Scots. What he doesn't realise is that Scots are just Geordies who, got out the house and wandered too far.
Did you say a Jory?
Geordie.
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 You kind of like the Star Trek character? Anyway, I digress.
Nothing like
Tail
that.
Feature, though, I do watch his channel, and he's actually in the chat, so welcome, sir. That's awesome.
He should get into the hangout. The gay bastard.
Hey,
I should put it on
if you
Twitter.
know him and you want to send him the Hangout link, go ahead. I've never had a chance to have a discussion with him before. And like I said, I am subscribed to his channel. I
To
do
be
watch it.
perfectly honest, he's quite an intelligent chap. It says here.
But don't you think the whole idea of freedom of speech and the idea of the jester is an important one overall? And especially freedom of speech. I mean, that's what the American system is kind of fucking based on, basically. The idea that I could say whatever I want. Hey, memes, you're a dumbass fucking cunt. There you go. What are you going to do about it? Sue me?
Oh, no, I was typing in the chat.
But you know what I mean. I can say anything I want as long as I'm not trying to incite violence or, a riot or something.
Well, what if you try to start a custody fight?
Well, that's a different scenario. That would have to. So moving right along. No, one of the things is where does a person's rights end? Well, your rights end where another person's rights begin. If you're inciting violence, it's like, well, if you're instigating a person to be harmed, well, that seems to be problematic. That's a no-no. We've kind of decided that, at least the Supreme Court has. But at our current point now, isn't that the argument? It's like, well, speech, is it violence?
Yes.
Yeah.
But comedy isn't violence. In fact, comedy, for the most part, lampoons violence and makes fun of it.
Well, that's the thing, man.
Well, yeah, and satire, especially political satire, has been around since there's been newspapers, right? I mean,
I think it's been around since we've had speech, possibly even before.
Oh, that's true, right? Graffiti, Roman graffiti, was
Greek
pretty
graffiti,
much political cartoons, right?
Greek graffiti, Egyptian graffiti. For all we know, some of the cave paintings might have been the same thing.
So do you think the idea of free speech came out of Western society, or is this just something that sprung from humanity as a whole?
I think it's something that sprung from humanity as a whole. Before there were like dictators and tyrants, and despots, we had tribes, and tribes, yes, you've got a chief, but they function more democratically.
You mean folks in general aren't actively trying to kill each other, usually?
Right. Within one tribe, no, but if another tribe comes along, yes.
Yeah, but then why is there such a difference between Eastern and Western societies when it comes to freedom of speech in the current era? If it all sprang from our humanity, wouldn't Eastern tradition have the same freedoms that us in the West hold so dear?
How long ago did humanity spring in this current? Did modern humans emerge? And how long did it take to get to every place that they got to?
Well,
then consider the lifespan of a human and how quickly and radically societies changed normally within our knowledge.
No, that's the thing, man. We have thousands of years of completely different history. Like that's going to affect folks.
Put it this way: if you were to go back to 1910, right? It's a little over 100 years ago, right? It's a completely different world. It's nothing like this. Yeah, not just the technology, but the attitudes, what people consider.
Would you say it's a whole new world?
Yeah. What people consider acceptable and unacceptable was completely different then.
A fantastic point of view.
Societies can change so radically. It's amazing what can be thrown up, and that's why the Far Eastern civilizations are so different from the Western ones.
I don't necessarily know if that's true because they've never really taken the idea of democracy or republics or freedom of speech for that matter seriously. They've always kind of had a top-down approach to their society. So I don't necessarily think it sprung out of humanity as a whole. I think it sprung out of Western thought and Western theory.
Oh, you're saying Western thoughts started it, do you? So all these sots got together and created democracy. did they?
Wait, no, we're not going to blame Twitch. I realize they're a competing platform, but we're not going to do that. And we got the Zero Cool joining us. What's going on, brother? Haven't talked with you in a while.
Oh, not much. What did I walk into?
Uh,
Oh, shut up,
By-
Batman! You
by
know
the sound,
here.
by the sound of your voice, it sounds like you walked into a bar, a cruel bar.
I thought it was a bathroom.
No.
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, you
crowbar.
got some good acoustics going on. But no, we're just talking about the idea of freedom of speech, and is it okay to be the jester anymore? Because it seems like when you point out the
Are you
fault
referring to actually having a sense of humor and being able to tell jokes of various caliber and magnitude?
It's not just the telling of the joke; it's the ability to appreciate the joke.
Yes.
I would say in very short order, you can. I don't care what anybody says. If you want to say a joke, just know what crowd you're working with, because if they're too stupid to figure it out, then you're just wasting your time.
It's not just too stupid. It's
it's the point. It's the point
right
of
crowd for the joke.
Batman. Yeah, well, that's the second half of it, but it's also the fact that some people don't get the sense of humor that other people have. Like you and I, we get British sense of humor. My parents don't. But they'll catch on that it's meant to be funny, and they'll just be like, yeah, they'll just kind of give a feigning haha because they don't want to look stupid. But I, on the other hand, do not get, let alone like redneck humor, because I think it's a little too crass. But I don't tell people not to do it.
You don't like Larry the Cable Guy?
No, I don't.
I know, right? Like, oh,
I think he's
Zero,
kind of
you're
retarded.
killing me, brother. I love that
Right,
shit.
it's like that.
See,
It's like that.
but that's the point, Mad Dodge. We each have a different flavor. I can appreciate a lot of types of humor, but I don't always get them all. But I'm not going to say to a person, no, you can't do that. Who the fuck am I to say that? I'm not anybody to tell anybody that. And there are some, and to be honest, I'm more of a tater redneck humor guy. I'm more of a Ron White guy, very occasionally. But the point is, if people don't have a sense of humor, they should shut the fuck up, stop their whining, and people should be able to tell whatever joke they want. And if a person doesn't get it, buy a sense of humor.
How about Andrew Dice
but
Clay?
Can you refer to somebody as being, I don't know, looking kind of like a cast member from Planet of the Apes? Is that okay?
Yeah, I do believe that Milo Yiannopoulos was being a smartass. He wasn't necessarily calling Leslie Jones an actual gorilla. But the thing about that whole thing is, whole thing about that is, Leslie Jones built her so-called career on comedy and telling nasty jokes. Yeah. She was just being a little bitch.
I thought that was Roseanne.
I don't think he actually did call her
no,
simian.
He
said she looked like a man.
She took it, yeah, and she took it that way, that he was. Yeah. And like I said, she built her career on telling shit jokes and potty mouth humor. And she's being a little bitch.
It's the age-old saying, isn't it? Can't take it, don't dish it out.
Well, yeah.
Didn't Roseanne get canceled for saying that, along with if?
Yeah. Well, I think
and ISIS
said it.
I mean, it was racist. But when they put those pictures next to when they put the pictures next to each other, I'm like,
no, it wasn't.
Oh,
yeah, dude. Put the pictures next to each other. It looked like that fucking character. That's not racist.
It's hypocrisy because you get black people calling other black people all sorts of derogatory names that they try to make you feel bad and ashamed for. And I have black family members on my ex-wife's side, and they'll just turn around and look at me, and they'll just wait for me to crack one open like a can of fucking beer, and they know who I am and how to roll with it.
Well, it's ragging on each other, dude. It's like that's what you do to people that you actually like care about and you have bonds with. Yeah.
That's right. Well, that's right. That's the point. But it's also when it's in one community telling another community they can't say something, and then they try to redefine a specific word that you can't redefine. And it's said in Clerks 2 when Dante says that word was specifically designed to be derogatory and cruel to people. You can't save it.
No,
you get the general. No, stop. You get the general.
Porch monkey for life. I'm taking it back. Don't worry.
Right. Well, not that, but that's not the word I'm talking about. That's a secondary part of the word he was referring to. But he was also referring to the big N. Which when black people say they can say that all they want, but you can't say it because you're not black. Okay, well, don't be calling people honkies or crackers or whatever, because if we start saying it and we take the power from you and it's derogatory meaning, you get mad about it. We don't care.
Thing is, we don't. Yeah, that's it. They call us cracker, honky, whitey, and all these free little names got for us. We don't care. It rolls off our back.
The British used to call, and they still do, but the meaning of the word has lost its power to an extent. The British used to call Americans Yanks and as a derogatory term. Well, we are Yanks for a reason, but we also call the British limeys and wankers and all this other stuff. And we've cross-cultural adopted euphemisms and phrasings. And when you have people that know each other like Batman and I do, and we call each other that, we're not going at it because we have enmity or any specific problem with each other. We know how to play it close to the vest because we can handle it on a certain level, and we know each other to a certain point.
It's not. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not venomous. It's not like more like you're having a tussle. You're doing some wrestling,
right? And it's the point of not making it venomous or combative. And the problem is everybody thinks that their shit doesn't stink and that they can be venomous and combative all they want. And the rest of us are just like, we don't. It's like, I didn't kill my wife. I don't care. That's what it breaks down to, and they don't like that, so they cry and they play the victim. And they try to strip everybody else from being able to laugh at something that they may find inadvertently funny. I mean, it's okay. It's okay if somebody, mouths off to a police officer and they get tased because it's, don't tase me, bro. But you can't say a certain word. Fuck that.
Well, no, and real quick, I'm reading the chat. Magic Moloch says, I thought Leslie Jones built a career as Harambe's stunt double. Perhaps. But no, to kind of touch upon what you were saying, Zero, I agree. It's like me and Cabby, we'll sit there and call each other cunts and argue for 2 hours straight live on air. We'll hang up and then we'll just kick back and drink a beer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's true. No, but you have to admit, like, depending on where a person's come from, their life experience and shit, like, even just dropping C-bombs and stuff, like, I'll be straight. I'm not the biggest fan of the word and stuff like that. I think it's disrespectful to gals. My personal feeling, if someone's going to use it,
my daughter will call you a pussy.
Yeah,
my lesbian daughter would call you a pussy.
She calls me a pussy. I'll scratch her eyes out.
She'd probably think you'd enjoy that too. But my point is, memes. While I do agree that you have a specific valid point of it's where a person comes from, it's sooner or later a person basically has to take the underwear out of their butt crack and stop giving themselves intentional wedgies and playing the victim.
Well, a lot of comedy. I mean, go back to like my parents' generation. The comedian who swore all the time wasn't well liked, and it wasn't because they didn't like they were offended by the swearing so much as it was they thought it's an easy way to get a laugh. There's not much skill in it.
Oh, okay. So like what you're saying, Batman. Well, no, what you're saying, Batman, it's like a rap song, and the rapper, every other word's dropping the fucking, not the hard ER, but the N-bomb, every other word. Yeah. It's just filler. It's garbage.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when Don Rickles was, at least in American culture, considered at first time the master of insults. He did it because he wanted to see who and how he could get a rise out of what and when and where of the people in his crowd. That's insult comedy. That was his niche. But the thing is that, and people knew that was his niche. If Don Rickles was alive and trying to do that today, they would try to do the whole whatever political correct bullshit movement, and he'd just be up with both fingers in the air. He wouldn't care. The thing is, what Batman is, if for people out there in the audience, in case you haven't caught it specifically, what Batman is, there were old time comedians who did that just to rise out of people because society was so bouffant about things. I don't know if that's the right word, but they were very nose stuck up in the air, and they thought that the only good comedy was highbrow comedy because they didn't know how to have a sense of humor. we're on the same
I don't
these
think
days,
it was-
except they don't have the sense, they don't have the capability of highbrow humor because they're just whiny crybabies.
I don't
no,
think it was
but I
because they
think
had
there's
highbrow.
also-
Hold on, it means I don't think it was because they were all highbrow humor. I think it was just because that's the way society was there. You just didn't say certain things, and that's why swearing.
I think it's, Batman, I think it's
Yeah.
kind of also a difference of generations because my parents' comedy was Chris Rock and George Carlin. So that was full of fucking cuss words. You know what I mean?
That was my comedy.
Yeah, like when we had Eddie Murphy's Raw and we had George Carlin saying the 7 words.
Richard Pryor talking about a crack pipe
and
floating in his
but
face.
see,
Yeah, I mean, come on.
but those guys are classic American liberals for the freedom of speech, for the freedom of expression, basically saying we are for what the United States Constitution allows us as long as it doesn't have a call for action to harm oneself or another. They played dirty pool, but they played dirty pool by the rules because they knew how to be respectful. Nowadays, it's complete topsy-turvy, and everybody wants to, again, play the victim. And I'm the kind of guy, I don't give a crap. I can use my gay card, I can use my black card, I can use all these so-called identifier cards, get away with it, and it'll piss somebody off. But I basically learned to stop worrying about the bomb and love science.
Well, no, and here's the thing, though. Zero, don't you think somebody like George Carlin would be wigging out right now? He'd be kicked off Twitter, wouldn't he? George Carlin, no fucking wig.
No. He'd be kicked off the American continent.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, he would. He would be hanging out with Steven Crowder, and that would be something. Or Tucker Carlson, and people would throw a fit about it, simply because while Tucker Carlson feigns at being a Republican or conservative, and Steven Crowder actually is more of a traditional conservative.
I consider Crowder a libertarian. I'm not to cut you off, but I think he's more libertarian, to be honest.
Well,
but anyway,
libertarian, whatever. The point
is,
they would hang around with Steven Crowder simply for the fact that Crowder actually has a sense of humor, and if people have seen his things, he plays dirty pool too, in the vein of Carlin and Rickles to an extent, and that's why people have a problem with him, because they don't have the cojones to lighten the fuck up.
Well, no, and I want to give another shout out to the chat. Uzi Q's in the chat. Hey, how you doing, Uzi? Ace of Skull says, when George Carlin was alive, he was considered a Democrat. Now he would be alt-right. Yeah.
They would force him. They would force that label upon him. He will. He would always be like Christina Hoff Sommers, a liberal, a classic liberal. But the way that the whiners and the crybabies act, they would force the alt-right title on him, and he'd still give him middle fingers and tell him.
They would also be calling him a white supremacist.
Yeah, which and that mean because they wouldn't do their homework. They'd know nothing about George Carlin. They would know nothing about Don Rickles. They tried to pull that same shit with Stan Lee, and it didn't work. And so now that Stanley is passed away, look what has happened.
Now Stanley's dead.
Look what's happened to his creations.
These people, they don't do their homework. If they don't know about a person, they make shit up. And there's so many of them that make shit up. So many of them in high positions in the media, when they make shit up, the average person on the street tends to believe it.
Yeah, and then they want us to have that hashtag thank a journalist. And I'm like, for what? You don't know how to do your damn job. You don't know how to do what Lois Lane and Clark Kent and Perry White would do back in the old days, which is actually, regardless of political beliefs, wait for facts to come out, actually hunt down sources and relevant information and search for the truth and print something viable and unbiased as much as possible. They don't give a shit. They want that almighty dollar, and the rest of us, we don't give a fuck. They don't represent us. So hashtag thank a journalist for what? Sucking at your jobs? Anybody else would be fired by now.
Well, no, and before we get too much sidetracked away from the comedy aspect, have you heard Chris Rock come out about...
That goes back to the comedy aspect of it's hypocrisy, it's one thing over the other.
Well, no, but have you heard Chris Rock come out at all about any of this? He's been silent, right?
I don't think
he is a comedian that will say whatever the fuck he wants.
He doesn't give a shit.
No. Well, he's one of them who stopped going to university. Well, he's Americans called colleges.
Yeah, and I don't blame him. And I think that if
Jerry
there's- I think that-
Seinfeld, who I
Yeah.
would barely call a comedian.
and I need to ask, in regards to comedy, where would all these comedians have an exodus to? Because it would most likely be Canada or South America or somewhere. Because if they go to the UK or the EU on a certain level, they'd be foisted and changed next to Tommy Robinson, because the magistrates are ridiculous wonders.
It's not magistrates. Magistrates are like.
Well, you know who I mean.
Yeah, you mean the.
You know, because
the law.
it's like they have the higher courts over there that if you can't pay something on time, yeah, we'll repossess it. We don't give a shit. Okay, well, that's why we don't have that here in America, which is probably, again, one of our biggest issues. But where would comedians in America go? They would probably go to Canada or South America. They couldn't stay in America, let alone the
Poland.
EU or the
They'd go
UK,
to
because
Poland.
they'd be hunted down ultimately.
They'd go to Poland.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hungary.
or Hungary. I mean, what's going to be left? I mean, Canada's not going to let some edgy comic in there. Hell, they're not even letting Lauren Southern into fucking the UK.
Yeah.
Lauren Southern's not a comedian, though.
Well,
No, she's
going to
hot.
fool me some of the time, but you know, whatever.
Steven Crowder is a comedian, but he also has dual citizenship. And he doesn't always go back to Canada to visit family, because he's even basically said that for comedy in Canada, it is terrible because they're adopting the philosophy of other countries that have geopolitical ideologies that want to ruin everything for everybody. So comedy is going back underground where it was in the 40s and 50s and 60s. You know, because comedy's always been out in the mainstream, but they're the various types of comedies that Steven Crowder does now, that George Carlin did, that Don Rickles did before it became mainstream, is going back underground where people can actually appreciate it. We're just not going to hear about it the same way that we didn't hear about it in the late 50s and early 60s.
What I'm waiting for is one night in a comedy club. It's going to get so bad that you'll have one night in a comedy club, some comedian be standing there on stage, and the heckler will jump up. And instead of putting the heckler in his place, the comedian, because he's got to respect everybody's feelings now, will have to thank the heckler for his input.
Yeah. So comedy, much like everything else, is going back underground.
Yeah.
And we've seen it with comic books, we've seen it with musicians, we've seen it with movies. While everybody's having this whole and I think everybody's lying to themselves that they say there's no such thing as superhero fatigue. The better movies are coming out. Better movies are coming out across the board when they are not mainstream. Independent comics, independent movies, independent music that is not mainstream or major label, which has always been that way, is coming back in full force for being underground and being better, as opposed to wanting the major label. They're like, we don't want the major label because you can't let us do things our way. You're
not wrong about the superhero fatigue. I mean, even if the SJW plague hadn't infected the superhero genre, especially in movies, it would still have happened. I mean, it goes in cycles. Before it was superheroes, it was
sci-fi, and before that, and it was horror and everything else.
Yeah, it goes in cycles. It always has.
Yeah, it does go in cycles, and that's the thing. Everything comedy, since we're talking about comedy and how it's being affected by a lot of things, it's, again, getting back on topic, Mad Dodge, it's going underground where it originally came from, and it's probably better off for all of us, because people don't know how to take a joke, and it's going to get worse with 2020 election coming, because people did not get their way. This is probably the fastest election cycle that I have ever lived through in my entire life, 44 years on this planet. Because people didn't get their way. When people didn't get their way back when I first started voting, we basically took we had Clinton in office. He was okay as a president, but he sucked as a person. So on and so forth. And then it got too heavy on one side, then it got too heavy on the other.
With Clinton, I've got to disagree.
I'm not getting into politics here, Batman.
Let me finish what I'm saying. Let me finish what I'm saying. Okay. Now, you said Clinton sucked as a person. You're wrong. It was Lewinsky who did the sucking.
Yeah, I knew you were going there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So my point is, people used to have the capability of saying, okay, this election is over. That's fair. We've got our representatives. We've got our mayors. We've got our political figures in place. We can work with these people and find some type of equitable solution. They don't want that anymore. And it's all because one generation, which is where George Carlin comes from, is on its way out and trying to ruin everything by mind wiping and screwing over their grandkids, the millennials, because they couldn't do it with Gen X. And that's what it is. And that's why things are going, again, as Styx Hexenhammer said, especially with comedy, it's the moral panic of the 80s trying to revitalize itself, the satanic panic, so to speak. It ain't going to happen because people will not give a shit in the long run.
Yeah, I know you said you don't want to go into politics. That is one of the legs of comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and politicians always get butthurt about comedians being political. And the thing is,
not all the time, but most of the time,
no,
yes.
That was my finisher, and that's true. Not all the time. Now they're all taking cheap shots at a president they don't personally like, and they've stopped being funny because the president has fired back.
Oh yeah, and he's done it with more wit,
and he's done it better. I remember presidential roast. They did it for Ford. They did it for Reagan. Did he just drop out? It must be him. But so hopefully he'll be back, because if he ain't, we're all in trouble. But they used to be able to do presidential roast, and people would have a good old time saying, hey, you took your cheap shots. It's okay. I can take a joke. Now they can't do that. And they want to once again define what comedy is. And it's going to get to the point of, F you, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to take it. And the geopolitical movement that disguises itself as a so-called religion is at the spearhead of doing that, because they're backwards-ass, cave-dwelling, inbred butt fucks.
Oh,
they don't know what's funny.
We're on about Arkansas now, are we?
Well, they make Arkansanians look good.
Uzi Q saying that the Dean Martin roasts were awesome. I didn't see a lot of them, but yeah, he's right. There's one of the things that always made me laugh about Dean Martin when I found out was everybody thought he was a drunk. The thing is, he was always saying with a glass in his hand. 9 times out of 10, it was lemonade or something.
Yeah, and everybody always thought Jerry Lewis was literally insane. But he was a bit more of a lush. But he wasn't insane. He played the dumbass. He played the screw loose because
he was quite
eccentric. Don Rickles, yeah, he was eccentric, but that was his niche. For as much as Don Rickles was insult comedy and George Carlin was a forerunner of heavy political commentary, Jerry Lewis was heavy on the screwball aspect of it.
Here's one thing about Jerry Lewis. He had his finger in a lot of pies outside of comedy. Yeah, like industries and stuff. His dog started to go deaf, so he had one of his electrical companies research into an implantable hearing aid for dogs.
Right.
That's eccentric, but it's also quite sensible as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we still live?
No, I'm semi-conscious.
No, I meant the live stream. Are we still going? Because I'm
so.
Okay, can you guys press 1 out there if we're still going?
Yes, I just turned the volume on.
Okay, we are. That's good. Because I didn't see I've been watching the live stream and I haven't seen anybody's logo but mine for some reason. And code 40, go 14. And usually when somebody else talks like you, your image will pop up.
Oh God, no. We've lost the Dodge. He's dodged out.
He's been gone for like 3 minutes. That's why I asked. Oh shit.
Quick,
he's been gone for like 3 minutes. So
not Connor.
So I drink in No Things number 2. So was this specifically about? Okay, join us as we take the piss out of internet and talk some news and politics. Okay, so our main focus of the chat was comedy. Is that what I walked into here? Okay,
comedy, free speech, and, women with big chests.
Yeah, you know, because even in, and I'm not going full political with this, I do recall that some of the best humor between people is taking cheap shots at each other. I recall in Demolition Man where Sylvester Stallone's talking to another character. He said, "I can't believe they grounded you. You were a damn good pilot." Mm-hmm. And he was saying that with actual admiration. And then Sandra Bullock's character, this is not an SJW type movie. She was pinpointing how certain views can be, and nowadays it would be. But she was basically saying, if you had read my study on this is how insecure men talk to each other. And it's like, that may be an interesting way to say things, but we men have always done this. We've always complimented each other in very vulgar manners. About damn time he got back. What'd you do? Get kicked off? You let your wife touch the phone again because you still have dial-up?
He went for a quickie.
Oh yeah. So you see, that's how men handle things, and we say it more directly. Women, on the other hand, when they think they're being funny, become viperous. They become venomous. Mm-hmm. They think that they're being funny, and guys will stand out on the side looking at each other like, God, was that supposed to be funny? It's not that women